Chivalry is dead. I think we should resurrect it.
Really?
Absolutely. You're listening to Marriage Mania, where we are audacious, sagacious, and tenacious for the Lord to uphold godly marriages and to raise fervent children who are countercultural and stand for biblical truth.
Welcome back. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Michael.
And man, you really think we need to bring back chivalry?
Absolutely.
That would be actually super amazing. Like, from my standpoint, I think that would just be absolutely lovely. I think men don't have that perspective.
No, it's something that it's kind of lost in society, going back to the women's rights movement and women's liberation and wanting to be equal, meaning the same. And so to have these distinctions of men having to kind of care for the ladies in a special way just seemed very unequal.
Yeah, but let's really understand, what we're talking about here, and then kind of lay it out to where what is chivalry and like how do we do this and who does it? Is it the husband? Is the wife? Like how do we go about this? And like from a wife's perspective, I mean, I know I have a lot to say about it. So like let's look at it from the perspective of like how men treat their wives or even relationships today versus that chivalry that we want to kind of talk about today.
Yes, I mean, it's important to understand what we're talking about with chivalry since it's dead. I think it's been in the tomb for a while and people are like, I'm not even quite sure what it is. But
but like today's men, like before we get into actually describing it, like how do you see men treating their wives or, their relationships today?
Well, I mean, that's a broad category. I mean, everybody's different, but I guess there's just a trend of, treating everybody the same and equal meaning the same. And there's that lack of care, I think, in treating wives and their children maybe even very delicately. And there's I think men naturally have a more harsher edge to them, and if they're not like trained in order to have kind of a softer edge and to look out with care for others and those that aren't as strong, then they they're not brought up that way and they can be kind of harsh. And so I think there's a harshness in a lot of marriages. There's men that can be very domineering and very abrupt, and because they're not being taught how to treat others with care, and that's where chivalry comes in.
Well, like I think you're making a really good point there. And when we're talking about like men being harsh, it could also relate, don't you think, to like how they speak. Like maybe it's not as encouraging or uplifting. Maybe they feel disrespected, or maybe they're just very frustrated because they're on edge, but like they're not taking and channeling that in a godly way. And also they could have been brought up that way, right? With seeing their parents in a bad relationship, or maybe they just never connected in a way that really shows how a man should act, right? So
you're bringing up some really good points, and some of it can come from frustration where there's an inborn need for a guy to be a protector, to be a provider, to watch out for his family, to be that guard dog, as it were, and to watch over his family. And when that's kind of neglected, when that role is kind of taken away, that can create some angst and some frustration in guys, and that could cause even more abruptness and sharpness to come out in a personality, because it's like there's something missing here. And there's an inborn instinct in me that's not being accepted. It's not being it's not being applauded. It's just the opposite. It's being criticized, and that's not who you're supposed to be. And if you're doing that, you're some kind of toxic male or such, and you need to be more feminine, and you need to be more like the ladies, and then the ladies need to be more like the men, and everybody needs to be just exactly the same, and we lose all those distinctions. And I think for most men, it's like there's something missing there. I'm not being validated by my wife as being a man in the family, and therefore a lot of men are seeking that out among their guy friends, is let me spend some time going hunting and, go and play football and watch sports so I can start, feeling a little bit more manly or so.
But don't you think also that's probably a validation from society as well? Because it seems like there's that feminist movement where women are taking more control. And so men tend to kind of step back in a lot of these roles that God really intended for them to step into. And so maybe that's also contributing to that character of man, where he's like, well, she's in control, so whatever. And there's that harshness because that's not what God called them to be. Like, they are called to be leaders, and they're missing out on the role that God has for them. And it's like the wives that are taking control are taking that blessing away from the husband.
Right. And it causes a lot of tension where there's just kind of a power struggle going on. And instead of, God's ways creates peace, and it creates harmony where everybody understands what's expected of them, and you're operating under that instead of having to sit there and kind of fight for what you want and who's going to be domineering and who's gonna win out, or or even just like, well, we're both equal partners and we're just gonna both talk about this and come to a group decision. But what do you do though when you don't agree? Then what happens? Do you just continue to just stay locked? Or is there some kind of system where it allows, well, the husband to be able to say, well, I just feel the Lord is kind of leading me in this direction, and the wife feels like, okay, well, in this case, I'm going to submit to that. We've talked about it. We've prayed about it. We can't come to an agreement, but if you feel that the Lord is leading you in that direction, then I'll submit to that leadership, and that God has spoken through you in this case.
Yeah. So I think that's great. And a lot of people are probably really excited to hear about that because we're hearing it from a man's perspective. And then we're talking about chivalry. And so let's define, like, what does that actually mean? Because that's a word that you really don't hear. Like, you're not walking around town and just saying that word, right? So, or it's not really said in marriages. It seems like a really outdated English term, or, so tell us what that actually means.
Well, it actually originates from the French.
Okay, so French instead of an old English term.
Yeah, French word for knight, like Knights of the Round Table.
Okay.
Chevalier or chevalier. Chevalier. Pardon my French. I don't know.
Chevalier. I like that.
Chevalier. I never took French, but I guess that's how you pronounce it. Chevalier. Chevalier.
Chevalier.
But so that's where the word originated. So it means knight, and it was a code of conduct from the knights back in the medieval times, emphasizing what they were supposed to be like as a knight warrior, that they were to have honor and courtesy and courage and justice and a willingness to help the weak or to serve others. It refers to being polite and respectful and attentive behavior by men towards having, being very attentive to women and to the ladies. It's like putting your coat over a puddle for her to walk on. Yes. That cliche, or holding doors open for her is less cliche. That's not, you don't see that done much. Or pulling out the chair for her to sit down, giving up your seat for a lady. If you're on a bus and a lady comes in, you're going to allow her to stand while you sit. No, chivalry is say, no, you give up your seat. Please have a seat. Or like when arrows fly, he covers her with his protection, or in modern day, he takes the bullet for her. He defends her against intruders. It's those kind of notions that really bring out honor in a guy and really motivates him. But it's kind of interesting. All those are great qualities. Don't you want to inspire men?
Yes.
To have those qualities, to have honor, courtesy, courage, justice, a willingness to help and to serve, to be polite and respectful and attentive towards ladies and children, and being very helpful, and ladies first and you first, not me, you first. It's not my ways, but your ways. And those are qualities we want to teach boys to have, right? If we don't teach them, then they tend not to have that. And I think that's what's lacking in a lot of our marriages today because, men aren't being taught those. They've got to be raised up to have those qualities. I
Mm-hmm.
think ladies almost tend to have that natural nurturing technique, which
Mm-hmm.
brings out a lot of those qualities to kind of put others first, put their children first, really look out for husbands. Men sometimes need to be taught because they've got that abrupt side to them, the warrior hunter, but it has to be steered in the right direction in a way that your strength needs to be in a way that serves, that looks out for
Mm.
somebody else, that looks out for your family, that looks out for your wife first, to protect them and to
Mm-hmm.
provide for them. And if you don't do that, and if you actually do the opposite by saying, no, you're not supposed to have those qualities as a man, that's toxic in some way. And then
That's crazy.
that just causes them to say, well, I guess I'm not supposed to act
Right.
honorably or put you first or open doors for you. I mean, that just teaches a man to be a little bit more gentle in your ways with your wife and with your children by putting them first and by opening doors and pulling out the chair. It's just a way to train boys to be gentle men.
I think that's so powerful because that is missed. There was a couple at our old church, Suzanne and Tom, and man, he would open the door for his wife. I mean, you open the door for me, and I'm so grateful for that. But just watching them as they are elderly, he would get out of the car and she would just sit still. She would just sit there in the car, and we're like, what's going on? And it took him some time to actually get up, get out of the car gingerly and, shuffle to the other side of the car and then open the door, and she was ready to come out. And I was just like, whoa, that is amazing. Like amazing and beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I'm sure they have been married for 50 years and you see that, but it's like, it's so honoring. And I think maybe we see that like many years past, like 30, 50, 60, 70, 80 years back. And then here we are, we don't see that as much. And I do hope that, Christian moms that are raising their sons, they are teaching them to do that by helping with the sisters. Oh, your sisters are coming. Don't let them go last, but the son would go last and open the doors for all the sisters or help the sisters. And I just think that's so beautiful. And then in marriage, like what a way to get like a great like excitement from the wife, and like the wife just feeling so loved in that way. It's such an act of kindness, such an act of love. And it probably, well, I know it makes me feel like, wow, I'm protected, and I feel like, he's watching out for me and he's making sure that I am okay by opening the door or, letting me go first. I mean, those are beautiful traits that we don't see a lot of men do. And I do think, and I agree with you, that it should be something that we should have in marriages.
Yes, because I think I like what you said there. You said that very well, and I think guys can end up, their natural bent is to kind of push their way in front and me first. Because guys can be very aggressive, and it's kind of part of their personality and their biology, and can kind of run over other people, and so that's why if boys are not trained to and steer that aggressiveness and that manly quality that they have in the right direction, to use that strength in a way that serves, in the way that helps and that looks out for the other person, and that's protecting and providing. If you don't steer that in that direction, then we have a tendency as men to just kind of be pretty abrupt and just kind of run over the other person and, get out of my way. I want to be 1st. You're supposed to satisfy my needs. This is all about me, and be very kind of domineering and such, and without that kind of training. And to me, that's what chivalry is. It's training, and there's biblical support for that. I mean, the husbands are taught in Colossians 3:19, husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Or 1 Peter 3:7, live with your wives with understanding, showing honor to her as a more delicate vessel, since they are heirs of you of the grace of life. We're fellow heirs together, so that your prayers will not be hindered. I think God is very chivalrous, and as he's not only our father, but he's our father-in-law when we're married, and he's like, this is how I want you to treat my daughter. I want you to treat her with understanding, get to know her, understand her feelings, understand that she's very different than her, and get to know those differences and honor those differences, showing honor. That's what chivalry is about. You put the ladies on a pedestal. That's what you're teaching men to do. Don't just not to walk over the ladies in order to get what you want and be aggressive, but no, be delicate with them. They're not men. You don't treat them like you would other guys, where you shove them out of the way. And in order to be first, there's a lot of competition among the men, and you got to teach men that you don't do that competitive aggressiveness towards the ladies, that you live with them with understanding. You get to know how they're different and they're more delicate. And you put them on a pedestal and you show them honor, as 1 Peter 3:7 says. And if you don't, our Heavenly Father-in-law says, if you don't, then your prayers are going to be hindered, because the relationship with me, says God, is going to be hindered because you're not treating my daughter very well. And it's up to us parents to teach our boys in order to have that chivalrous attitude towards the ladies, to be understanding, to show honor, to treat them delicately. It's not that they're weaker, it's they're more delicate. And it's more of a mindset of how the guys are to treat her as the more delicate vessel, not harshly, not running over her, not pushing her out of the way so you can be first, not expecting her to be your servant and wait on you hand and foot. No, you are to serve. You are to put her on as a pedestal. You are to honor her. You are to seek out understanding of her. Let me observe what she's like. Let me see what her personality is like. Let me engage in communication and ask her a lot of questions. Why do you, especially on things where we think differently on, it's like, why do you think the way you think? I want to understand that. Tell me more type of attitude, and not be harsh with them like we might be more with the guys. And husbands are to agape love their wives as Christ agape loved the church. What is agape love? That's defined in 1 Corinthians 13:4-8. Agape love is patient, kind, doesn't envy or boast, is not arrogant or rude, does not insist on its own way, is not irritable or resentful, keeps no record of wrongs, does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Love always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes, it always perseveres, and it never fails. That's chivalry, right? And that's what men overall are called to do, is to agape love their wives. In other words, treat them with chivalry, put them up on a pedestal. Don't insist on your own way. Don't be irritable. Don't be resentful. Don't be arrogant or rude. That's chivalry. And that's what we are lacking in today's society, in teaching our boys how to be chivalrous to their wives and to the ladies. And you do that by teaching them how to treat their mothers, how to treat their sisters. You train them in that. You open the door for them, treat them delicately. You pull out the seat for them, you treat them delicately. You put them first. It's ladies first. Because you want to, otherwise guys have a natural bent. It's me first, and I'm going to bully my way to the front. If you don't teach them to put ladies first and to treat them gently, that's what creates a strong relationship, if they treat their wives that way. I mean, I love what Jesus said in Matthew 11:29-30. He said, "Take my yoke upon me and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." It's like Jesus is like, my burden is light, my yoke is easy. I mean, would our wives describe that of ourselves? Or is our yoke just easy and light, or is it burdensome? Is it domineering? Is it abrupt? Is it how would that is it chivalrous? Is that how our wives would describe us? The same way that Jesus was described as meek, gentle, and humble.
Yes.
Those are the ways that our wives would characterize our character towards them. That needs to be trained. That needs to be steered. Meekness is strength under control. It's not weakness. It's strength under control. It's purposely being gentle and humble, and that's what we need to train our, because they have a natural strength to them, and that strength needs to be channeled into meekness, strength under control, and gentleness and humility.
I think those are some powerful statements that you made, because I think every wife that's listening to this is probably melting. And if that's not part of their marriage, they're desiring that, because that's what we want. We want our husbands to treat us in a way that is gentle and kind and just, loving in every single way. And I'm sure you've touched the hearts of many, and that's exactly what God is calling men to do. That is part of the whole leadership structure that God has in his design for marriage. And I think that once those things are displayed, as the husband is treating his wife as the church, that's where change happens. That's where wives begin to see their husbands in a different way. That's where wives begin to feel that love that maybe they're not seeing. And like, there's an impact. Christ becomes the center, and things begin to shift, and marriages begin to heal. And yes, it's because the husband is to lead in that. Even if the husband is not receiving back that same love, or is feeling in a way disrespected, or not treated in the way that he should be by his wife, man, that is where God is calling the man. Like, you are the man. You are the one that's going into the battlefield. If you look at the Old Testament, the men were the ones that went into battle. The women didn't go into battle. You're entering into a battlefield when you are in marriage. And if these things hinder you from stepping up into that role to lead the group, to lead the battle, then you're failing at the battle, and the battle is going to be won by the enemy. And that's huge. And so if men do rise up to step up to what God has designed for them to lead in that battle, then you're already winning, because one, you're abiding on what Jesus is telling you to do. Lead your family, love your wife, wash her in the word, all the things that Ephesians says. Then the wife is automatically going to be like, whoa, something has changed here. And my marriage is completely different. What's happening? Like, I want to honor him. Like, I'm just so thrilled. Like, it just becomes natural to the wife to begin to submit and respect her husband, because she's seeing this amazing change in the chivalry that's happening here, because he's treating her in a way that maybe she hasn't felt before since they first dated, or maybe because of having children, the children have taken a priority, and like, she hasn't felt that in a long time. And maybe he hasn't felt love. Maybe he hasn't felt love in the way that he needs to feel, because he's the leader. He's leading this charge. He's leading in the battle, and the battle is real. When you get into marriage, is not roses, is not like this beautiful green grass. I mean, there are going to be seasons that are going to be difficult, and one may not do what they're called to do in the marriage, but it really requires the man to really kind of lead that and step up and step out and just continue to lead his family.
Oh, I love what you said there. I mean, that's beautiful and well stated. And it brought to mind Jesus's model of leadership. And that comes from, John 13, 1-7, when he washed his disciples' feet. I just love that illustration because it happened right before the Lord's Supper. And it's like, why did it happen then? Well, the context behind the Lord's Supper, whenever it was the Passover, and during the Passover, guests were seated according to a pecking order. Those that were closest to the host were seated beside him, and then the next closest was was next, and the next closest was next, and the next closest was next. And so it's believed that the disciples got into a little bit of an argument because where are we going to sit? Well, who's the greatest? Well, I'm the greatest. Well, I'm the greatest. And Jesus was like, whoa, you guys have got it all wrong. You've been with me for 3 years and you still haven't picked up what I've been putting down about what it means to lead. Leadership is servanthood. And let me give you an illustration of this. And he got a wash bucket and a rag and started washing his disciples' feet, which is what only the lowliest of servants would do, because they were walking around in sandals and dusty roads. Who wants to do all that and wash somebody's stinky feet? And so it was only the lowliest of servants, that was the lowest on the pecking order, that was doing that. And here you have the rabbi, Jesus, the Messiah, that is washing his disciples' feet. And Peter was offended. Lord, you ain't going to wash my feet. And it's like, if I don't wash your feet, then you have nothing to do with me, because you're not picking up what I'm putting down. This is what leaders do. We serve. Yes. And the God of the universe came not to be served, but to serve. And let me show you what exactly that really means, practically speaking. I want you to get down in the dirt and serve the other person. And that's what he calls us to do with our wives, is to serve. We serve our family. This is not me. I'm not being first. No, I'm going to put you on a pedestal. I'm going to honor you. And does your strength bring your wife a sense of security? Is your strength intimidating? Would your wife characterize you as a gentleman? Jesus was a strong man. He overturned tables. He drove out the money changers who were selling at the temple. He stood up to the Pharisees, did not back down from anybody. Yet his overall character is described as gentle, meek, humble. He had a strength that made others feel safe. He had a strength that others wanted to follow. Husbands are called to lead their families as Christ leads the church. They take care of those that God has entrusted them. A leader guards his flock. He protects them. He provides for them. He teaches them. He helps them with their tasks. Amen. He makes sure they have everything they need. Fellow brothers in Christ, God has entrusted your wife and family to your care. Care for them. Care not only for their physical needs, but also for their emotional needs. Know what they need and do everything you can to meet that need. Give them your time. Talk to them face to face without distraction. Be at their important events. Lead them in family Bible studies. Pray with them. Play with them. Constantly be looking for ways to help your wife. Carry things for her. Open doors for her. Compliment her dress, her hair, and her beauty. You would die for her. Also be willing to live for her. God has given her to you to care for her. Do not neglect the primary task that God has given you.
Amen. I have nothing else to say about that because you covered it. And I think that is so amazing. And I'm so grateful that we were able to talk about this topic today. And, a lot of this we talk about in the covering, the role of a biblical husband, which is based off 1 Corinthians 11:3. And that is a Bible study that we created because we believe the importance of that role, and that role changes everything. And if men just step up to that plate and abide in what God is asking them to do, and that's to lead their families, to have that chivalry in their character, and just continue to lead and love their wives in a way that God wants them to love, then, marriages will change. There's going to be miracles and testimonies that we can hear about. And so, we are excited about that. And we talk a lot about biblical roles, and you can find those details about the covering, the role of biblical husband based off 1 Corinthians 11:3 in our comments. And it's just a way to support us. And you can support this podcast by giving us a thumbs up, or if you want to support this podcast so that we can continue, you can check the comments on other ways that you can support us. It really helps us as we are aiming to reach families, aiming to put discipleship in the hearts of many wives and husbands so that they can raise up the next generation to know Jesus. So please check that out in the comments. Until next time,
God bless.
And I'm just so excited because we're going to be a part of this amazing conference at Culture Proof. And we're going to be at
The Ark Encounter in Kentucky.
I
That's
mean,
awesome.
super excited.
Yeah.
Ken Ham will be there, Abraham Hamilton, Israel Wayne. We will have Miki Addison, who is part of Culture Proof, and we're so excited.
And Will Addison.
Will Addison, we love him too. We are just so thankful for the Addison family. I mean, they are such Culture Proof family. They talk about the culture and how we can protect our kids and how we can raise our children in a biblical way. And they're so fervent about it. And we are too. So we are in line with their mission, and we are so excited to be a part of that and to be able to speak there. We're so thrilled. So if you want to join us, July 16th through the 18th, we'll be at the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum in Kentucky. We're so excited. You can look at cultureproof.net for more information. Join us there.